Rain fell in thin, cold sheets over the abandoned bus stop. People hurried past, umbrellas overhead, not noticing the girl curled beneath the rusted shelter, a thin hoodie, torn jeans, and a plastic bag holding everything she owned. Her name was Mia. Her stomach growled so loudly it hurt. She pulled out the last thing she had saved all day, a squashed sandwich wrapped in foil. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Then she heard it. A small voice. Soft. Shaking. "Ma'am. See, can I have a little? I'm really hungry." Mia froze. A little boy stood in front of her, no more than 6. Big brown eyes. Rain dripping from his hair. His clothes were clean but soaked, and he clutched his tiny stomach like he hadn't eaten all day. Mia swallowed hard. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. But she smiled. A weak, tired smile, and held the sandwich out to him. "Here, take it." The boy's face lit up in a way she hadn't seen in years. He devoured it, whispering "thank you" between bites. Mia blinked back tears. She didn't even know his name. But seconds later, a black luxury SUV screeched to a stop beside them. A man jumped out, frantic, soaked by the rain. His suit alone looked more expensive than everything she'd ever owned. The boy turned slowly. "Dad!" Mia's breath caught. The child she just gave her last food to was a billionaire's son. And the father, the way he stared at her, like he couldn't understand why a starving girl would save his child. That moment would change her life forever. If this moment already pulls at your heart, stay with us. What happens next will shake you. And bestie, please subscribe for more emotional stories like this. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Mia wasn't always the girl people crossed the street to avoid. 2 years ago, she had an apartment, a job at a bakery, and a mother who used to braid her hair every Sunday. But life has a cruel way of turning without warning. Her mother got sick, bills piled up, and Mia dropped out of school to work double shifts just to keep them afloat. She tried, and tried, and tried, but the world didn't try for her. When her mother passed, the landlord changed the locks before Mia could return from the funeral. Everything she owned was thrown into a dumpster. The city became her roof. Park benches became her bed. And the only thing she carried with her was the last message her mother whispered on her hospital bed. "You were born to be kind, even when the world isn't kind to you." Most days, Mia didn't eat. Some days, she'd go 48 hours with nothing in her stomach but hope. And tonight, just before she met that boy, she had stood behind the bakery dumpster, crying, debating whether to eat the employee meal she saved from her last shift months ago, or give it to someone who needed it more. Mia wiped her tears and chose the second option, like she always did. She didn't know it yet, but that one choice was the one that would change her entire life. Because the boy she fed wasn't just lost. He wasn't just hungry. He belonged to someone powerful. Someone who had been searching for him with the desperation of a father drowning in fear. And Mia had just stepped into their lives. Mia sat on the cold pavement, holding the small food box she'd saved. She whispered to herself, maybe tomorrow will be better, even though tomorrow had not been kind in a long time. That's when she heard it. Soft footsteps, shaky breathing, and a small voice whispering, "I'm hungry." Mia lifted her head. A young boy in an oversized coat stood a few feet away, cheeks streaked with tears, his hair messy as if he'd been running for hours. He wasn't dressed like someone from the streets. His coat was expensive, his shoes new, his hair carefully cut. Yet here he was, alone, terrified. Mia's heart clenched. "Hey," she whispered softly, afraid to scare him away. "Are you hurt?" The boy shook his head slowly, but his stomach growled loud enough for both of them to hear. Mia had nothing but the old, barely warm box of food in her hands. And still, she offered it to him. "Here," she said gently. "Eat, please." He hesitated, as if he had never been shown kindness by a stranger before. Then, slowly, he sat beside her and opened the box with trembling fingers. The moment he took the first bite, tears streamed down his face. "You're so nice," he whispered between sobs. "No one ever gives me anything." Mia froze. Why would a child with clothes worth more than her entire life say that? Before she could ask, heavy footsteps echoed from the alley entrance. Sharp, frantic, angry. "Milo! Milo!" The boy stiffened instantly. "That's my dad," he whispered in panic. "But he's going to be mad." Mia stood up slowly, heart racing. And when the man finally appeared, drenched in sweat and fear, she realized that nothing about this moment was normal. Because the father running toward them looked like the kind of man whose picture belonged on magazine covers. And the way his eyes locked onto Mia, as if he knew her, stole the breath straight from her chest. Mia stepped back as the man sprinted toward them, his breath sharp, his suit jacket half-buttoned like he'd thrown it on in a panic. The boy leaped to his feet. "Dad!" The man dropped to his knees, arms wrapping around Milo so tight it looked like he was afraid the boy would disappear again. "Oh, thank God," he whispered into his son's hair, voice breaking. "Don't ever run off like that again, buddy. You scared me." For a moment, Mia watched them, a father clinging to his child, shaking with relief. It hurt her more than she expected. She had never been held like that, never been searched for, never been someone's, thank God. But then, the man slowly lifted his head. His eyes found hers, and his expression changed. Completely. Fear became confusion. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became something she couldn't name. "You!" he breathed. Mia's heart stilled. She had seen that look before, a mix of shock and recognition, a look she'd learned to fear. "I didn't do anything," she whispered quickly. "He was hungry. I just—" "You fed my son?" he asked, quietly stunned. Milo tugged his father's sleeve. "She was nice to me, Dad. She shared her food." The man looked at the half-empty food box still sitting beside Mia. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in something that looked too much like guilt. "Miss, what's your name?" he asked carefully. But before Mia could answer, a black car screeched to a stop at the alley entrance. Two men in suits jumped out. "Sir," one called urgently, "your brother just arrived. He's furious. He thinks Milo was kidnapped." Mia's stomach twisted. Kidnapped? Because she gave a hungry child food? The billionaire turned to her again, and for the first time, Mia wasn't sure if she was safe. Especially when the man added quietly, "Whatever happens in the next few minutes, please don't run." Run? Why would she need to run? But then the second car door opened, and the man who stepped out wore a face Mia recognized instantly, because he was the same man who had destroyed everything she had left a year ago. Her lungs turned to ice. And suddenly, this wasn't about a child at all. This was about her past. Catching up. Mia's knees weakened the moment the second man stepped fully into the light. Leon, her ex-boss. The man who threw her out of the diner after accusing her of stealing tips. The man who told her she'd never be worth anything. The man who laughed when she begged him not to fire her because she had no home left. He looked exactly the same. Tall, polished, cold. But now, he was also the uncle of the little boy she had just fed. Mia's heart sank. Leon's eyes narrowed. "What is she doing here?" he snapped. Milo's father raised a hand sharply. "Leon, stop. She didn't take him. She helped him." Leon scoffed. "Helped? You mean this homeless girl? You're joking." Mia flinched like she had been hit. The father's jaw tightened. "I said stop, Leon. Milo was hungry. She shared her food." Leon stepped closer, voice low and venomous. "She's a problem. I told you last year when we caught her stealing." "I never stole anything," Mia whispered, voice breaking. Leon turned to her, smiling cruelly. You think anyone here will believe you over me? But then, the father, the billionaire, slowly stood up, and something shifted in his eyes. Leon, he said quietly, she looks familiar. Mia froze. Leon stiffened. The billionaire frowned, studying her face more closely. Milo, son, show me the picture. Milo dug into his small backpack and pulled out a wrinkled photograph, one Mia didn't understand until she saw it. It was her, sleeping on a park bench, taken secretly. Weeks ago. The billionaire looked shaken. Milo, why do you have a picture of her? The boy held the photo to his chest. Because she helped me before. Mia's breath caught. What? When? And Milo whispered something that made every adult in the alley freeze. Because she saved me last time too. Last time. There was a last time. The billionaire turned sharply to Leon. You didn't tell me this. Leon's face drained of color. Mia stared at them both, heart pounding. There was something she wasn't being told. Something big. And when Milo's father finally looked at her, his voice was trembling. You weren't just kind. You weren't just in the right place at the right time. A beat. A breath. Mia, I think you might be the reason my son is alive. Mia didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight, her hands shaking as she stared at the photo Milo held. She remembered that night now. A freezing, brutal night under the highway bridge. She had heard a child crying somewhere in the dark. She had followed the sound. She had wrapped her thin sweater around a shivering little boy and kept him warm until morning traffic began. She never saw his face in the dark. Never knew he memorized hers. But he remembered. Milo stepped closer and wrapped his small arms around her waist. You were warm, he whispered. You were the only one. Mia pressed a hand over her mouth as tears spilled. The billionaire father, Adrian King, exhaled slowly, like a man realizing fate had just put the missing piece of his life right in front of him. All this time, he said softly, you protected my son. Twice. Mia shook her head. I just didn't want him to be alone. Adrian stepped forward. And I won't let you be alone anymore. Leon scoffed, but his voice betrayed panic. Adrian, she's a homeless girl. You can't. Adrian's tone turned sharp. Leon, you lied to me. You told me someone else found Milo that night. You hid the truth. Why? Leon swallowed hard, eyes darting. Because he knew. He knew if Adrian ever learned the real story, he would never let Mia go. Adrian looked at him with finality. You're fired. Mia gasped. Wait, he's your family. No, Adrian said gently. Milo and I decide who our family is. And you, Mia. He took off his long black coat and placed it on her shoulders, the same way she had given her sweater to Milo. You kept my son alive when you couldn't even keep yourself warm, he said, voice thick with emotion. It's my turn now. Mia's chest shook with sobs. Why me? She whispered. And Adrian gave the only answer that made sense. Because kindness is priceless. Because no one saw you when you were suffering. But you still saw my son. A beat. And because he chose you before I even knew your name. Milo took her hand and swung it lightly. Daddy, can she come home with us? Adrian's eyes softened. If she says yes. Mia's breath broke. No one had asked her that. Not ever. And after a long, trembling silence, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I'd like that. Milo cheered. Adrian smiled. The kind of smile that only appears when fate finally makes sense. Mia looked up at the sky, feeling warm for the first time in years. She had given her last meal to a child. And in return, life had given her a family. Sometimes the people with the least give the most. And sometimes, a single act of kindness ends up rewriting an entire life. Mia squeezes Milo's hand. Adrian smiles at her like a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't leave just yet. Click subscribe, join our SoulTwist family, and let the next story find you. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.